Last week on Antilles.
I hear it all the time that, where when people say, oh, you're playing there goes so-and-so playing the black card again. Oh, there you go, there's a contingent of people that feel that groups like us, conversations like this, only gives our group an excuse for being mediocre.
That's false. Because given the opportunity, black people excel at everything.
The person that incited this lively exchange is the very provocative Raoul Peck.
I did not set out to become a filmmaker. For me, images, film were something you do on the side. My father had a photo camera, he had a Super 8 camera. I used to play with it, use it, but it was not something coming from Haiti, a poor country, and for many other reasons that did not sound serious.
This is Warren Wade Anderson,
Reggie Valentin,
Tony Sherry,
Mark Barozzi.
Welcome to the 8th episode of Antilles, part 2 of our discussion on Raoul Peck's Exterminate All the Brutes. If you haven't listened to part 1, we urge you to stop right now and listen to it. Part 1 will give you the context for the upcoming discussion. Let's join the conversation already in progress.
This highlights the title of the second episode in the series.
That's my favorite title. Say it.
Who the fuck is Columbus?
That's right.
Thank you. And it's not abstract. It's pretty poignant. It's pretty straight to the point.
Right.
Because that right there talks about the changing of the narrative. This is fact changing and truth changing, right?
We celebrate this guy.
We celebrate this guy
Every year.
But he kicks off, and I think the most poignant animation in this particular episode, in part 2, was the animation of the middle passage.
My God.
You begin to see how it starts off as a trickle, and then it just it floods in, and you see the numbers. It's sort of like a counting machine, sort of going off the numbers of human beings that are being transported as slaves to the Americas and the Caribbean. Ultimately, it was sort of very emotional just to see something that was like very, on the face of it, sort of like an abstract animation.
Yeah.
And you see the numbers at the end, you're like 12 million people, almost 13 million people taken as slaves and brought over to the Americas.
Does that even account for those who died in the Middle Passage?
No, not at all. That alone made me. I felt like I was panicking. I couldn't even breathe while I'm looking at those numbers.
Right. As numbers were ticking.
So
right.
I'm gonna,
and the way it's animated too, it's sort of like the continent's like blood, and it's like it's draining the blood.
Yeah. That was good.
Why wouldn't you be angry? Like I thought of like genocide and all those different things. Why aren't we talking about this more? So I'm just gonna give my own personal reaction to this. I was out of town when I saw that, and where I was, I know for a fact that there were slaves that were brought to that part of the world, right? And I'm looking out on the beach, and I got emotional just looking at it. Because in my mind, I'm thinking centuries before this resort was even put here, and I'm looking at the shoreline, I can't even imagine that only the people that weren't alive, who were probably sick, but they didn't know what the hell was going on. And to set foot and try to run in refuge in some kind of way, trying to
You're talking about the native population.
Yes.
In that area.
And how slaves were brought to that space. And seeing those numbers just really made me panic. Like I couldn't breathe for I felt a couple minutes because I'm looking at that number grow.
Right.
So I'm just saying to have that understanding and knowledge to see this film and it goes into what we're talking about here. I'm all about talking about the truth and having other people understand what that is, because that does bring a sense of identity. But and I'm going to this person that you're building an image of in this conversation who is of privilege, but saying to get over it. How can someone get over that and feel like everything is okay? How do you overlook that? And I would say to that person, how is it you're going to treat this person with understanding what they went through in terms of losing their families and having a lot of things being destroyed intentionally, to now look that over and say, okay, now we're equal. How equal? What does that equal look like?
Well, they would say that person, that my
yes,
generic
go ahead.
person
Get into character, please.
My generic person would say, well, that happened a long time ago. Like get over it. Like, you know, there's nothing that can be done about that.
But it's
terrible
continued.
that it happened. I'm sorry, but life's got to keep going on, right?
You take something from me, I don't get it back. I have to move on.
There's nothing we can do about it. I'm sorry.
I don't get it back.
Right.
I got to move on.
You got to pull yourself
You
up by your
killed
bootstraps.
my family. I can't bring them back. Shut the F up and move on. Okay.
That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying
No,
that
that is what you're trying to say. I'm offended.
Poor Warren.
That's what you're trying to say, okay? White person?
Okay.
You're a generic white person?
right.
Who is
you don't have to be racist.
Who's clearly ignorant of the fact that you're racist when you say that. Because you're not sensitive to people's plight. You're not sensitive to trauma. Look, there's an entire industry dedicated towards treating trauma. Psychologists, psychiatrists. The smallest things that happen to you, go see your shrink. Right?
Your mother beat you.
Your mother beat you. Forget about molestation.
Right.
Mother beat you. Your father didn't give you praise. Hence why you're a prick. Understand me though. You know, I went through so much. Like, I didn't get an award when I was a kid, and I need psychotherapy for that. People that go through psychotherapy because of these traumas, they applaud them for taking the responsibility of addressing that issue and recognizing that to be a trauma. And then the healing process is further applauded because you've overcome that. But you recognize something very important about that. There was a trauma,
Right.
that need to be remedied.
Right.
How is that different from someone who has a legacy of 400 years of genocide, of theft? You're not sensitive towards that? Here's what's most poignant about that graphic we were talking about with the middle
numbers,
passage and the numbers of people transitioning from the west coast of Africa.
Transitioning is very
Light, right? It's a
Right.
euphemism.
right.
From West Africa over to the Americas, right? And you made a very good point that animation looked like it was blood stains,
Yeah.
dots of blood, bodies just being transferred over to another continent. That to me shows how much more impactful and damaging slavery was, not just in America, but in Africa. Because those 12 million people and countless others that died, those people, you didn't replace them in Africa.
Right.
Those people were talented people, leaders, inventors,
Skilled.
that were not able to contribute to the African continent, creating a dearth of, available professionals and resources that were no longer that's not available.
Right.
And then you have the nerve to call Africa a shithole country. Or a shithole continent, but all the countries in sub-Saharan Africa,
Which you still learn from it.
because they don't call Egypt and all these countries shithole countries because they're special Africans. But any country sub-Sahara, below the Sahara Desert, or even the west coast of Africa, they're shithole countries, right? You're the cause of that.
Well,
You're the cause of that. You're the cause. The wealth and the greed, the wealth that you've accumulated. Building your palaces in Versailles, building your palaces in Belgium,
right.
building Buckingham Palace, building all these places in Europe, the architecture, all the gold, the Vatican.
Sucking
the
resources.
Vatican is laden with gold. From where?
Museums.
Where do you think the gold comes from?
Africa.
So you have the nerve to say, pick yourself up by the bootstrap, Africa.
Right.
I can't because I don't have the manpower. I didn't have the manpower to put me in a position to do that.
So, is the ambitious question or the ambitious solution to this are extreme reparations back to the countries that resources were stolen? To
There needs to be a conversation of how reparations need to be administered.
There are people working.
I don't want to
on
use the
that.
word extreme reparations, but it's an extremely
I
high
only say
amount of money.
I would only.
Well, hold on.
But it needs to be a smart reparations.
I'm gonna step out of character for a minute here.
All right, by time.
And I would say, like, I think I heard someone speak about this. Like, you know, there were staples, and this one guy was saying, well, he was saying out loud, this white guy's like, I don't see what the reparations, all this stuff about. Why not just give them a voucher for colleges or something like that? And I would say to that person, and to anyone who believes that reparations are not necessary, I would say to them, okay, let's say that your grandson worked for Apple before Apple became Apple. He worked there, never got paid. And all of a sudden, Apple is now what it is. Would you want Apple to dictate how your son gets the funds that he was owed? Not only that, even before you get to that, would you just say to your grandson, it's Apple, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go find another job?
No. I have something to say about that. What I think I've been very patient. So what I'm going to say about that is, when it comes to talking about, yeah, you know what, get over it. My you know, I didn't do it myself, and Africans or whoever was suppressed and destroyed and, you know, killed, you know, kind of get over it. Let's just start over. Okay, fine. So what I would say is, I want my great-grandchildren to have the luxury to speak comfortably as you do, because everything that we've had to build for our children have been destroyed and have been taken away from us. There's a lot of our history that is gone. Like, it's purposely done, so therefore everybody in my culture and heritage is at a loss of identity. They're at a loss of riches and wealth that you have conveniently taken away from us. Not you personally, but your people before you. So I would say, to fix that, we'd have to have an understanding as to how that needs to be done as of right now if we are going to move forward. Hold on, I'm going to cap off with this. But then it also has to help the generations after my culture and where I am right now. That's what I would say, because giving me a voucher for college, that's not enough. Because if I'm looking for any kind of work, I'm still in the same position. So before I walk in, there's still a limitation. People are going to have assumptions as to who I am before I even open my mouth. And that's not going to change if I just accept a voucher. There has to be more than that, where a conversation has to be where we're both educated, and now it has to be passed into our children. But there has to be something set for our children to live and have the same, if not better, luxury that you have. Because you've inherited so much. Right. And that my children and my children's children have not even seen yet, but I know what happens because I'm living that right now.
But there's hold on.
One thing the problem that we're having is that we're not even having this conversation. See, it's one. I'm not saying for us to be unreasonable about reparations. I know that it's a negotiation. It's a complex situation that needs to be negotiated and whatever it is, but let's have the conversation, because you'd be surprised, white people. We're reasonable. Mm-hmm. We've been reasonable from jump.
Right. We're not in a position of power.
We're not in a position, but we've been reasonable. I mean, for crying out loud, we adopted a system of peace through civil rights, nonviolence. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're amenable.
Yeah.
You know that. Don't act like you don't know that, and don't project onto me that I'm more violent than you. Because the first thing they'll talk about is Chicago this, Baltimore that. Right. That's not who we are as a people, because if we were like that, we would have burnt this country down to the ground years ago, even if it meant that we would be wiped off the face of the earth. Because let me tell you something, part of what this documentary is about is highlighting what has happened in Haiti. Because this whole knee-jerk reaction of white supremacy is them remembering what happened in Haiti. They didn't want that to happen again on U.S. soil.
It made them look bad.
Because Haiti got his independence through blood. They weren't Martin Luther King with it.
They weren't marching.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we're amenable. We're not like those crazy Haitians that coupe tete boule kai, which means in Creole it means cut off the head, burn the whole thing down to the ground. And Toussaint Louverture said, "Listen, out of the ashes, we'll take over the country and we'll make a better one out of it. Don't fret over the fact that we're going to burn everything down to the ground. Those resources will come back.
Yes,
we're going to rule over the ashes."
But even more than that, there's a history of even black people pulling themselves up by their bootstraps.
Correct.
Again and again. That town in Tucson, Tulsa, Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they had a prosperous black town, and then
multiple black Wall Streets.
multiple black towns. Even here in New York, there's one in Brooklyn. There's one in Manhattan. There are thousands of them.
Yeah, they're all over.
And when they started to prosper, the surrounding white communities came and destroyed it.
Yeah.
Like physically destroyed them. So even if you were to talk about pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, we did.
And
There are many instances in which this happened.
And it's also shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
You have, so shut up. You're good.
Right.
You're fine.
Right.
But let's go back and address the who the F is Columbus
Yes.
aspect of the second episode.
Right.
Where to me, what that represents is the mythology
Yep. That was created.
that white supremacy wants to uplift to blunt the pain and the effects of white supremacy.
Right. By saying like Columbus came here and he discovered a pristine landscape.
Right.
They called it the free land.
Right. Like there was no one.
They kept on calling it free land.
Yeah. Right.
It was up for grabs.
Yeah. And that what it does, it otherizes the natives.
Cash was like, word?
It otherizes them, if I could coin a phrase, whatever. It makes them into an other that they ascribe the nature, for lack of a better term, of savagery. Like that's in their nature to be savages. And then when you do that, you as a civilized group, all you're doing is taming a wild environment.
Right. Again, it's a justification. It's just like in Europe. It's sort of like the reason I'm doing this, the reason I'm violent is because I have to do it in anticipation of them.
Yeah.
Right.
In defense.
And one thing I want to mention real quick before I forget is the fact that the whole idea of Columbus, this romanticizing of Columbus, right, being the discoverer of this,
New
pristine land, it undercuts the idea of this whole campaign was state-sponsored genocide.
Right.
It's not just a rogue agent that went into a country and killed a few Indians. This was Spanish Empire sanctioned. This was French Empire sanctioned. This is British Empire sanctioned.
Portuguese.
So that further puts into the conversation the idea of responsibility that our generation of white people refuse to take.
Right.
And the religion of white supremacy in this episode, in my opinion, they talk about that. That's what I interpreted. It's a religion of white supremacy that was then merged with the science of white supremacy, creating the justification needed to reduce the black man to the level of animal, or the Native American to the level of savage.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And in saying that, I'll let you talk, Tony. Going back to the picture that I painted when I said I was looking out the shoreline and the whole image of the blood and all that, I almost started to tear up because I could see, as you're talking about the genocide, that's the romanticizing story of how Columbus has these three boats that come in. Right. Was it the Nina, the Pinta, I think the Santa Maria. Yeah. Like they romanticize it as if it's a beautiful thing, but I just saw blood coming. Like they coming in, they're invading your space.
Very, very
to
scary.
Kill you. Right. They're like taking over. So
as Raoul Peck would say in a separate interview, an interview he did with Michael Moore on his podcast, it's as if someone comes into your living room and says, "This is my living room now."
put their feet on the table.
What's your name? Oh, it doesn't matter what your name is. You're an Indian.
Oh, and by the way, your wife is my wife now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going upstairs.
Yeah.
So I was reading this article, and this was an article in 2017 because there was a controversy somewhere, I think in Florida. I'm not sure, but there was a group of Italian Americans that were defending Christopher Columbus because now there's more awareness. People are trying. Honestly, Columbus Day should not be a day. I mean, I'll take the Monday off, real talk. But they need to call it something else. But that should not be a day.
But the thing about romanticizing someone like that,
well,
he was a mercenary.
But let me finish my thought. So this is what the man said, and I'll digress. He said that all these groups, all these Native American groups, and all these groups that are trying to cancel Columbus needs to be canceled. If Cosby can get canceled, Columbus needs to be canceled.
Well, I feel you on that.
He said that we are unfairly judging a 15th century person by 21st century standards. That's what this guy said. Can you imagine that? That's what they did. So that's what they did in the 15th century.
So he's saying that your argument is valid, because if that's the case, then why not just cancel it? Because this is an archaic notion of things. Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of the Columbus Day.
Yeah, Columbus Day needs to get canceled, bro.
He's basically telling you, like, I agree with you. We should cancel it.
But there's a sense of pride attached to.
Call it Italian American Day.
Yeah.
There's so many other worthy.
But if Columbus was still alive, they'd take that down in a second.
There's so many other worthy Italians. Michelangelo Buonarroti. Who.
There's enough. To be happy about.
There's so many more. There's filmmakers. There's painters. There's sculptors. There's a rich culture.
Great soccer. Great belts and shoes.
It's just it's endless. So holding on to this archaic notion, I think is kind of.
And it says something that Columbus Day is still going on in 2021. Like there's
absolutely.
a Columbus Day in
we'll 2021.
Go away eventually.
But I wanted to talk about something real quick before we have to wrap up this part of the episode here.
Episode 2, yeah.
Episode 2 is heavy though.
No,
super heavy.
Raoul sneaks in a notion that I don't think we need to sort of
talk about.
Put shine a light on, which is he reverses the race with the black priest.
Oh yeah. That was.
And basically he says if blacks were like if blacks had the same agenda as Europeans, they would do the same. Did you guys see that?
Where were they? Was it in the Congo? I think they were. I don't know what the setting was.
I think it was a generic place.
It was a generic place, right? And you see the white pastor. The black pastor.
Yes.
With the white guide, I guess, right? He was some sort of guide or whoever is.
Yes, and also you saw the white slaves.
White slave, and then there was like a black overseer or whatever.
Beating, and he said, "Why are you beating that person up?" And he goes, "No reason."
Yeah.
And then the priest gets involved with it. He starts to brutalize this person this white woman who's tied to a tree. And what he's saying, I think what he's saying in that is that notion of superiority, that notion of purity is corrupting to any human being.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if you guys...
I picked up on that, yeah.
But that's great. Right? Sure. In theory, sure, anybody could have done it, right? If they had the opportunity, right? I guess that's what the implication is.
Yeah.
Okay, great, but y'all did it. Like I don't know how else to put it. I mean, in theory, there's a lot of things you could speak about in theory, but we're talking about what's happening.
Well, let me push back on that because there have been many examples or instances where one group could have dominated the other group in the way that the whites have done to the blacks, and that didn't happen. When you look at the interaction between white settlers and Native Americans, that didn't happen.
No, but the natives were not in a superior position,
and to be fair,
and they didn't know what was going to hit them.
And in
terms of the weaponry and all that,
they had, and then the diseases that came, which killed most kill more than any weapons.
But even
did.
when they didn't know what was going to hit them, the initial welcome was there.
They didn't have that culture. What Peck is showing in that Black Priest is, what if blacks had that kind of Eurocentric greed culture?
I get that. But what I'm saying is, though, the fact that they didn't have that culture is the reason why they wouldn't be able to.
That's why they wouldn't. The notion of
Right.
coming into someone's land and going, "This is my property," wouldn't occur to them.
Right. So to me, that's something that's unique to the Europeans throughout the generations.
Right.
From the genesis of
But
that
what he's
culture.
saying is like, what if you flipped it, and the blacks were living in Europe, and the whites were living in Africa?
Oh yeah, if you give them this, if it's the same condition.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess you could say that, right?
Because
okay.
and then he goes further into showing the kind of the mistreatment of the Irish by the English, right?
Right.
Refer to them as apes. It's just the corrupting nature of that particular culture where you have to dominate. You have to take property, domination, and whatever you need to do to justify that, that's what you're going to do.
Right.
Interesting.
He goes through a whole bunch of other things. I mean, like, we never touched on it in part one, where he gives a list of the conditions for genocide, exploitation, slavery, conquest, contempt for aliens, and in this part two, he goes through the methods of genocide, which is massacre, sterilization, mutilation, destruction of cultural symbols, like what they did with the slaves. You take away their names. You take away any connection that they have to their culture.
That's what I meant in terms of identity.
So that you can manipulate them like a puppet.
Why don't we use the word genocide for what happened, for the atrocities that happened in this country? Because it definitely is a genocide. They wiped out
90% of the Native Americans.
That's a genocide.
That's genocide.
They never use that word. That word's never used.
Yeah, and I mean, in this episode, he goes into the Trail of Tears, which is taking those natives from the southeast, like the Choctaw and the Seminoles and all those, and marching them to
Westward.
Oklahoma.
So yeah.
But in any case,
But one important thing that he talked about, though, in that episode is the Age of Revolution, right? During that time period, the 18th century, the end of the 18th century, he talked about how 1763, that's the start of the U.S. Revolution. 1789, French Revolution. But also as important, 1790 was the start of the Haitian Revolution.
yeah, which I think is another aspect of this documentary series that makes it unique, because very few European-based documentaries or even documents really kind of speak about the importance of the Haitian Revolution.
Right, and the important thing to me was the fact that even the planters in Haiti, the French planters in Haiti, they thought that the slaves wouldn't dare revolt, right?
Just to give it a kind of context, it is the only successful slave revolution in history.
In history.
Period.
Right, but the ignorance of arrogance, right? Is that what the
confidence and ignorance.
the confidence and ignorance, right? So that's the reason why I brought that point of the white settlers couldn't believe that the slaves would revolt. Mind you, they were the minority in Haiti.
But it also goes into what you're saying is like, you're pulling these people from Africa and you're saying that these are beasts, these are kind of animals. Mm-hmm. But the people who started the Haitian Revolution were educated.
They were intellectuals.
There were educated people that were pulled like Bookman and Toussaint. These are people who were able to take in things, strategize, and use them in a way to free themselves.
Who were once illiterate, but they, some way, somehow. There were some advantage. There were some opportunities that even Louverture had from his previous slave owner,
because he learned how to read.
He learned how to read, and he learned how to strategize.
Right.
As a general. But the thing about Louverture people don't realize, for years, even while the rumblings of the revolution was happening, he stayed silent because he was seeing how things were developing,
right.
and he struck at the right time, and he became the leader of the revolution.
Right.
There were other
which goes against this whole notion of like they're all animals.
All animals, right? So now, what happens with the Haitian Revolution is the silencing of the Haitian Revolution is part of the narrative of global domination. The reason why I brought up these three revolutions towards the end of the 18th century is the fact that we know about the U.S. Revolution, we know about the French Revolution, but no one talks about the Haitian Revolution
because it was a threat to
the system,
a threat to American slavery.
Right.
It was a threat to slavery in general. If all of a sudden these different
the
notions,
Thomas Jefferson,
all these notions of these people that are able to free themselves, like we're going to lose their power. It goes back to what you're saying, Mark, which is if someone today sort of acknowledges that white supremacy exists and that wrong was done, are they going to take away my house? Are they going to put me out because I'm living on a property that used to belong to black people one time? I did an investigation. I found out about it. I should keep quiet about it because I don't want to be on the street.
Right. That's the fear.
But the other part about that time period in history was Haiti wasn't just a threat. Haiti wasn't just a threat in terms of them liberating themselves. When you look at the history of Haiti, so the revolution started in 1790 and went.
Spread the word.
Right. It went all over. It went through 1804 when we were made a republic, complete severed ties with France. Right. Prior to that time period, Louverture was trying to still have relationship with France because he didn't want to be cut off from the world economy. Right.
Yep.
But also, isn't it because they, and we're going to go into it in part 3, they had the armaments to bombard
that's not where I'm going with that. Yeah, but yeah, you're talking about
they had the armaments to destroy the Haitians from a distance.
But during the 14-year period where there was a struggle that led to the independence, Haiti defeated France like convincingly. So what you're talking about is a part 2. That's the aftermath of the independence.
Yes,
that we get into.
Yes,
where they require Haiti to pay
reparations to the slave owners
for getting their independence.
Right,
and which echoes part of what I mentioned earlier about how the Europeans were able to put cannons. They retrofitted their ships. The one good thing that the Europeans had going for them was that they were masters of the seas. While other civilizations were doing great things, like, for example, China invented gunpowder in the 13th century.
Right.
They didn't really participate in the armada race, right?
Yeah.
So we still regard them as an important civilization, but they never want to give Africans the credit that they deserve in terms of their civilization. We talk about like King Mansa Musa of Mali.
Right.
The man was the richest man that ever lived. Right. He had a pilgrimage from Mali to Mecca, which was, it's from West Africa to the Middle East, right? And as he traveled, he brought so much gold with him. He threw off the economic system. The gold got devalued because he had so much money, and he gave money to people as he traveled. Yeah. Right. So we don't talk about that. So that's part of.
But that's part of the system, right? Which is basically the value, whether it's artistic or otherwise. The value of a country or of a civilization is the ability, at least the European value, is the ability to be more aggressive than everyone else.
Right. Exactly. So they were able to use that technology to defeat, quote unquote, in another way, a culture, a civilization
to physically defeat
that was superior to them in a lot of other ways, right? Militaristically, the Haitians were kicking the British ass, the French, and the Spanish at the same time.
Yeah.
To the point where Napoleon sent 65,000
they all died.
troops to Haiti in 1802 after he finally captured Louverture, and he died in France. He thought, okay, that'll weaken the revolution. He didn't realize that Dessalines was a gangster.
Just as big as a threat.
Right. And then he defeated the 65,000 troops, right? So what am I saying? Not only were the Haitians able to defeat those factions, those empires to gain its independence, but we exported independence. And when you look at all these other countries in South America, Colombia, Peru, Argentina, Venezuela, Ecuador, all these countries, when you look at their history, there's not one mention of Haiti as the financier
and inspiration
and the tacticians behind those revolutions. When you look at the diaries of Simon Bolivar, he gives mad credit to Louverture, not to the Louverture, but more directly to Dessalines, because Dessalines had a direct relationship with Simon Bolivar. And Miranda, which was the revolutionary in Ecuador, who came to Haiti and spoke to Dessalines and said, yo, how'd you do this?
Yeah, how'd you do it?
I'll show you. I'm going to send you some of my best people to show you how to fight. And here's some gold. Take that with you. They don't talk about that. So peep this. Haiti gets independence in 1804.
Tell it.
After that, Paraguay 1811, Chile 1818, Colombia 1819, Peru in 1821, Brazil 1822. All that is after what we've done. This is after these great revolutions that happened between the U.S. against the Brits, French Revolution. We talk about those things, but we don't mention how we exported liberation. When was the last time you saw during that time period, did the Americans export liberation to other countries? We're doing that. We've done that nominally, recently, I guess, when we talk, we went to Iraq, Operation Freedom.
But they don't do that. It's an imperialistic.
That's what I'm saying. It's nominally. We're packaging it as freedom, but it's really part of the imperialism.
Because you could see in history that whatever regime Americans support always falls, because it's not a true revolution. It's a manufacturing.
It's part of imperialism, right. So what I'm saying is, we didn't keep this freedom to ourselves.
We shared it.
Exported it. We shared it. And we were reviled for it by the dominant society. Thomas Jefferson, which was president at the time of the Haitian Revolution, said, "Yo, he had a conference with all the world leaders. Like, yo, you saw what just happened here? Don't put that in the press.
Nope.
Don't put that in the history books.
Don't put that in history books. Forget it even happened." Why do you think that? I think up until recently, people even knew that Haiti even existed. Like if you ask an average student in America in the 80s,
Haiti,
what Haiti is,
they wouldn't know.
What is that?
Really?
Is that a Greek god? Is that a Greek god? Is that Haiti's the Greek god?
Is that a French Polynesian island? Is that Tahiti? That's what they're telling you.
So you're basically saying that, because I didn't know that. Are you saying that people didn't really recognize Haiti until the AIDS epidemic and until the people started coming on boats?
Around that time, maybe a little bit before that, but nobody really knew. Maybe Malcolm X knew. Martin Luther King knew, because they were learned people, right? Maybe that generation of civil rights activists probably knew a little bit about Haiti.
But the general public
didn't really know. And Silencing the Past, which is one of the books that Peck alluded to. His friend Trujillo, who wrote the book, talked about that in depth, about how the world conspired to silence the history of Haiti, and he perpetuated global white supremacy.
And also, he says it no more. The genius of that book is it's the idea that rewriting history,
right?
The idea that it's another tool of domination. You can rewrite history to favor the dominant person and not people who might have power, who are not in a dominant position.
I see all of this as holistically, when you break everything down and not necessarily talk so much about the gossip and the hurt and all that kind of stuff. I see all of this as just business. And I think that's whatever has value, it's what the person's going to try to either partner or take away from you. That's just my personal translation. I don't know if I'm translating this the right way, but this whole idea of taking over a Caribbean or taking over parts of the United States, or as you mentioned, like Europeans being like the taking over the seas or owning the seas. Every single thing that we're talking about here deals with some kind of substance that a country has. And the only way I could get through them is mentally manipulating them so that they now no longer exist, but I now take over. And I'm going to be the bully and know it. But when you come to me and say that you want it back, I'm going to like shrug my shoulders and be like, it happened, get over it kind of thing. Yeah. So I see everything that's happening. It's really a business deal. So I'm going back to your character now.
Yeah,
so I'm saying when it comes to that, that's why I said, unless that person is bringing, or we're going to talk about how we're going to understand how this happened and how we need to move forward, because it doesn't just stop with you. It goes with everyone that looks like you, the conversations you have when we're not around, the thoughts you have before we even walk into the room, when you look at us on paper. But how is it that now our children's children are now able to now live the way they should? Because I don't want to entertain the whole idea of what if the roles were switched and it were black people that were doing this and white people were oppressed. It doesn't even matter. Like, what happened is what is at hand, and we should talk about that. Let's just try to fix that.
Because if you don't rewrite history, then you will owe the money.
Speaking of rewrite history, I rewrote history with myself by accident. I mentioned that Simon Bolivar had a relationship with Dessalines, but it wasn't Dessalines. It was Alexander Pétion, which that's around the time when he became the first president of Haiti.
Good catch.
So
but still,
want to make that.
It doesn't erase your main point that Haiti was not only the catalyst for or the first black and the only black slave revolt. They were responsible for so many other people getting free.
So I'm going to go back to the white.
Never spoken about.
I'm going to go back to the white character again.
To the point where Latinos revile us.
Hugo Chavez did a good. He does. He supports Haiti pretty.
But the culture, the Latin culture, tends to look at black people, Haitians included,
even the Dominican
Republic. They don't know.
They don't know. They don't want to know. I don't think they want to know.
I don't know if they don't want to. They don't. They've been conditioned too.
They've been conditioned, right?
So I'm going to play the white. I'm going to play the white person character again, and I'm going to say.
Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you, sir.
And action.
If this, all the stuff you're talking about is so important, like why people know about the Haitian Revolution? I mean, like, if these people were so incredible, why don't we know about them? Like, if they've done such great.
Well, it's because they're incredible. We don't know about them.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Todd.
I mean, we know about George Washington.
Don't you think that there's a bias there, Todd?
We know about Alexander the Great.
You don't see the point that we're making, Todd? Well, then, Todd, you're ignorant, Todd.
Yeah. No,
I can't talk to you.
That's reverse racism, because you're not listening to what I'm saying.
What you're saying doesn't matter because you're not educated enough to have a conversation with me, Todd.
You're confident in your ignorance.
So I'd rather speak with someone that is learned than to waste my time with you, Todd. Have a good day.
Yeah, you're confident. Confident in your ignorance, Todd.
Yeah,
that's why your people always be in the position that you're in. Okay, before we wrap up, I just wanted you to know Mr. Peck's masterwork excited and exhausted us. We spoke passionately for about 3 hours on the first 2 episodes. Unfortunately, we couldn't muster up the energy to thoughtfully tackle the weighty subjects of the last 2 episodes. When all is said and done, we think this conversation in 2 parts is enough to excite people who didn't know about Exterminate All the Brutes to watch it, and encourage people who know about it to rewatch it. This episode of Antilles was moderated and produced by Tony Sherry, Reginald Valentine, Mark Barozzi, and Warren Wade Anderson. The audio clip of Raoul Peck was taken from episode 21 of the Pure Nonfiction podcast. Go to purenonfiction.com to hear the whole episode. Thank you for listening to Antilles.